Hi guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how to paint these raindrops. This was a really fun and easy one to do, and as usual I'll have all the supplies that I used listed in the description box below. So to start off, the paints that I'm putting on my palette are primary blue, primary yellow, permanent yellow deep, spectrum red and white. And to start, I'm using my size 8 round brush and I'm just wetting it a little. Now I want to go into the primary blue paint and mix that with white. So I want to create a really light blue, and I've already lightly sketched in where the rainbow is on the paper. So now I'm just going to start laying in the blue. Once I've done that, I'm going to wash off my brush and pick up some white and yellow and mix a really light yellow. And then I want to start painting in a yellow line right next to the blue. So I don't quite want to start mixing the colors yet. I just want to lay in a clean yellow line. And that's because if I start to lay the yellow over the blue straight away, then it'll start to create a green and I'll lose the bright yellow color that I want. So to start off, I just want a clean yellow line that isn't mixed with the blue. And then once I've done that, then I'll go in and I'll start to paint in between the lines. So I'll start to try and mix a green, but it won't be that strong because I've already used up most of my paint on the brush on the yellow, and now I'm just using the remaining bit of paint to just lightly blend the line in between. After that, I'll wash off my brush completely again, and I'll pick up some of the permanent yellow deep and mix that with white, and then I'll do the same thing again. So I'll lay in that clean line next to the yellow from just before, and once I've laid in a clean line, then I will go in between the two and start to lightly just blend it out. So the faster you can work, the better, because it means that the paint you've just laid down is still a little bit wet, so when you go back to try to blend it out, it'll be a lot easier to get a smooth blend. I've kept most of this part in real time just so I can show my process for how I mix water into the paints and how far the paint can spread before I need to pick up some more paint again, because I've had a lot of questions about how to get smooth blends or how to control water to paint ratio. And one of the secrets to getting good consistency in your gouache paint is a spray bottle, which I always emphasize the importance of. So I've had my paint on my palette for about 5 minutes now, and I can see that it's starting to dry just the tiniest bit. So then I use a spray bottle just to give it a quick spritz so that the paint still stays fresh on the palette. Now I'm picking up some of the spectrum red and I've just mixed it into my yellow mixture from before just to lighten it a bit, and again I'm laying a line just next to the yellow, and then once I've done that I'll go in and I'll start to blend it out. I also wanted to talk about the brush that I used. So I mostly used these silver black velvet round brushes. I have them in a 3-pack in size 4, 8 and 12, but most of the time I'm only using size 4 and 8. And I get asked a lot about what brush I use because I seem to get really fine lines with it, and it's because this brush comes to a really fine tip. It is a really good brush because it can hold a lot of water and pigment, and if I could only choose one brush to use for all my gouache paintings, then I would choose one of these in a size 8. But the only reason I am hesitant to recommend it is because it is made from a mixture of squirrel hair and synthetic hair. So I actually bought this back when I was trying to learn how to use watercolor, and I was getting really frustrated with the paintbrushes that I had. So I invested in these brushes. So they weren't cheap. I think it was around 60 Australian dollars for the 3-pack, but I really wanted something good and I'd read that these were really good. But I didn't really look into what they were made of, and now I know that they're made from squirrel hair and synthetic hair. And the reason they hold so much water is because squirrel hair is known for being really good at absorbing a lot of water, so they are really good paintbrushes, but I am on the hunt for a good 100% synthetic brush just because I want to be more conscious of the environmental impacts that my art supplies have, and I don't really want to use products that have any animal cruelty involved in it. So having said that, I do have these brushes, so I will continue to use them, but in the future I will only buy synthetic brushes. This is a synthetic mini mop brush that I just picked up from my local art store. I like to use a mini mop brush to paint my clouds because I like the way that they sort of fan out and they don't come to a pointy tip, which is not what I want for clouds, so that's great. So I'm going to use this brush to help me paint in the background of the clouds. Now I'm mixing primary blue with black and lightening it with white, so I want to create a bluish grey mixture. And I also have some ultramarine blue on my palette, which I will also start to mix into the mixture. For this part, I'm not too pedantic about how the brushstrokes look, especially because we are looking at this scene through a window, which means everything is probably a little blurry anyways. So I try to be a little bit more carefree with my brushstrokes. The only thing I am being careful about is to not accidentally brush over the rainbow, although we will come back and fix up the edges for that anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just going to keep mixing different shades of grey blue. So sometimes I'll mix in some ultramarine blue as well, and I will just paint in the stormy clouds in the background. So I want the top to be darker and then it'll gradually get lighter as we move down. One more thing to be careful of is to make sure your paint doesn't get too diluted. So when I was doing this, I was very tempted to just mix in a lot of water so I could quickly spread the paint around, but then I found that it was a little bit too sheer and I had to go in with a second layer sometimes just to build up the opacity of it. So just be careful if you're trying to spread the paint around quickly. Make sure you add in enough paint as well to balance the water in there. After I finish the background, I'm going to just fix up the rainbow a little bit. So I'm going in with my Spectrum Red and White mixture, and I'm just starting to smooth out the line where the rainbow meets the clouds. After it's mostly smoothed out, I go in with a clean brush, so this doesn't have any paint on it, and I just lightly brush it over the line just to try and smooth it out a tiny bit more. Then I repeat the same steps on the other side where I go in with my light blue mixture and I just smooth out that line as well. For the raindrops, I experimented a little bit before I decided on the easiest method to do them. So I think the easiest way is to start off just by using black paint to outline where the raindrops go. So just vary them in size and shape and put in a lot of little ones. I think the little raindrops are really what make them look real. So step one, just use black paint and just put in where all the raindrops go. And then once you've done that, you can use black paint again and just start to add in some shadows. Once you start putting in the shadows, they start to look a bit more three-dimensional. And then after you've done the shadows, then you can go in with pure white paint and just start to paint in some of the highlights on them. I think when you look at a photo of raindrops, it can look intimidating to paint, but actually it's quite simple. If you study some photographs of them, you'll start to see a pattern, and you'll notice that they actually all look quite similar, and it's really easy to mimic how they look. So for example, here is a photo from Pinterest that I think is a great reference to paint the raindrops off of. So for example, if you study them, you can just see that it's simply a black circle around the outside, and then there's a bit of highlight on the bottom of the raindrops. And similarly with this one, I think this is also a great one to study off of. So you can use these as reference photos to paint in the raindrops. You can mimic some of the shapes and the styles and where the highlights go in these. And then once you understand what they look like, then you can just paint them from your head. So you can just vary them in shape and size, and you don't have to worry too much about copying a reference photo. I think that's all there really is to painting raindrops, so I'll just leave it at that and I'll just let the rest of the video play. If you guys have any questions, you can just leave it down below and I'll answer them. So yeah, I think you can't really go too wrong with them as long as you just put in some highlights and shadows. They'll look like raindrops. So hope you have fun doing this. That's it for the tutorial. If you guys recreated this, please do share it with me on Instagram. I would really love to see. I hope you had fun giving this a go, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.